and welcome back to the Skill Work Forum, where we gather and talk about industry issues, emerging trends or challenges surrounding the skilled trade. So my name is Tim, and I'm joined again with my partner Brett from Skill Work. And on a previous podcast, Brett, you and I talked about what type of jobs that skilled craftsmen could be looking at that would give them the best opportunity to increase wages and opportunity in the next 10 years or so. Well, today we kind of want to look on the flip side of that and answer the question, what industries are facing the biggest talent shortage by 2030? So this is kind of the demand side of that equation. So we're going to kind of get into that a little bit and talk to it from that side of this discussion.
Yep, no, for sure. I think it's an interesting time. I think, we specifically, spend our time in the skilled trade space at Skill Work, and we know in our, this isn't just our numbers, we're not that smart, and so, but we know there's roughly a shortage today of give or take around 1 million individuals across the skilled trade spectrum, which is a wide spectrum. But I think the more daunting part of that is it's also pretty well documented that because of the retiring baby boomer, we've talked about it prior, the COVID exit of people, of some of those baby boomers who during this furlough time decided to not come back. They were maybe a year or two from retiring anyhow, so it accelerated that piece. Right. And we know that there's projections that the baby boomer population over the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is reaching retirement age about 10,000 per day. So all of these things, are growing. We know the skilled trades is going to grow from upwards of 2 million. So if you're a company, out there listening to this, and you're going, well, we just got to weather this. We just got to weather the COVID storm. I'm gonna say we had this problem before COVID. This problem is going to be here eventually when COVID leaves, but
and at a more accelerated rate.
At a more accelerated rate. So I think you have to really look at the reality of the growing issue. I'm gonna just read this. I don't usually do that, but it's easier. As just to kind of, and this is broader. This is more than just skilled trades. This is all employment, and this is even looking somewhat more globally as opposed to just here in the U.S. But there was a recent study done by the Korn Ferry Institute, and they looked across all industries and said by 2030, the global talent shortage could reach 85.2 million people, costing companies trillions of dollars in lost economic opportunity.
Yeah, that's big numbers.
And so they're big numbers. And so, and they went on to break down what portion of that, kind of fell in the U.S., which is obviously where we live and where we do business. But in the space that we probably are the most active in, not the only space that we're active in, but in manufacturing, they also in that same study, they talked about that by 2030, the shortage in the manufacturing space could reach more than 7.9 million people, costing those companies as just a result of lost revenue because they don't have the talent to be able to run the manufacturing facility as efficiently, that it would cost around $607 billion. If I recall the article, I believe just in the U.S., it was going to be, they were about 75 billion of that number. So the point being is over the next 9 to 10 years, 2030, we're in 2021, that this talent shortage is going to be continue to be the biggest challenge that faces, I think, many industries.
It's interesting, a lot of us in business, we like to project revenue growth, our 5-year goal. And, if you're assuming the growth based on opportunity in your space, but you're not taking into account the impact of this, your growth projections and revenue and all the people that really pay close attention to the bottom line of your company, whether you're privately owned or certainly publicly, the inability to achieve those objectives could be driven almost exclusively or to a large part in your inability to have the talent necessary to achieve those. So opportunity is great if you can actually capture it, which we're saying, there will be ones that can, the smart ones, the smart companies will be able to do it, but it's going to be highly competitive to be able to get those scarce resources. So a lot of documented reasons. We've talked about it a lot here on this. Maybe we sound like a little bit of a broken record, but it's true that Brett talked about the exiting baby boomers, 10,000 a day, are reaching that age, and many of those will choose to head to retirement. Fewer people choosing skilled trades. We know that is a fact. We need to turn that around, and the fact that previous podcasts we've talked about this fourth industrial revolution that's going to drive up the need for higher skilled workers, which are in even higher demand, and there's fewer of them available. So bottom line, within the next decade or so, the demand for skilled workers is going to skyrocket, especially across what's called knowledge-intensive industry. So another study we looked at, an interesting article. I don't normally push people to the Washington Post, but in this particular case, they did a nice job writing this article about some of these industries. So let's take a look and talk about, if you're in this industry, you need to pay particular attention to this in the coming decade.
Yeah, I think, it's the shortage of talent is going to be across a lot of industries. I mean, industries that we don't even participate in today, financial and so forth. I mean, software engineers, that type of thing. I mean, there's going to be a wide variety. We're going to concentrate a little bit more, in the areas that are a little more skilled trade focused, but I think that then it makes that interesting. I think if you're leading a company, whether you're the CEO or whether you're the plant manager or whatever the case may be, I truly do. Tim, you do for our business, you do because of your past, coming out of the military and so forth. You do a lot of risk. We do a lot of risk assessment and a risk analysis, which is the idea of obviously trying to look forward so that we're not putting out a fire, that we try to get ahead of it. And I think this issue, which is already on us and only going to get bigger, is going to be the biggest challenge for companies to really be setting down and going, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to handle this? Like you said, I mean, put it out there and say, well, we're going to grow our business by this, we're going to do that, we do that. But we work with a company right now who made a decision to close 2 facilities, move the production into 1 facility. On paper, made all the sense in the world. It was going to make them much more efficient. The production, they're now, I don't know, they're way past the schedule. All 3 plants are now still running, all 3 inefficiently. Why? Because they can't find the talent, they can't find the people. So they, the idea was good on paper. So it's right now. It's like you said, put your plans out there. You can do all these things, but if you don't have a plan as to how you're going to get that talent, so manufacturing is a space that's near and dear to Tim and I's heart, because we put a lot of skilled trade folks in that space, and a lot of this, a minute ago I mentioned 7.9 million people short globally in the manufacturing. A lot of that is going to be the production workers, the folks in those plants. That's going to force, and you guys and gals that are already in that space, leading those you're already seeing it, that it's forcing more automation. That automation is going to drive need. It's going to create a skills gap. It's going to create a skills gap in what they need. So you have to have a plan that I would suggest. One of the other industries that I'm not sure which study said this, that's going to be really striving for talent is the technology, media, and telecommunications. I would say this is going to be a little bit like we're in that time of year, it's fall, so we can do a lot of football analogies. And so it's literally going to be, who's going to get that 5-star recruit? Ohio State or Alabama, and it's literally going to be, I think, at that level where you're looking for these individuals that have these high-level tech skills, whether it be machine learning, PLC, we call it low-code development, those kind of things. Well, that same technology it's not that different. I mean, it's different, but it's the same type of thought.
Skills translate,
yeah.
though.
Yeah. So who's going to get the talent?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I like that because, we're both football fans, and you're looking at college and recruiting, for a great program, it only takes a handful of 5 stars to make that a winning program. So you can use the route where we're gonna bring in 100 2-stars, or 50 2-stars, or you're gonna bring in 5 or 10 5-star recruits. And if you're not following this at all, apologize for the analogy. Essentially, let's get the top quality talent. There's fewer of them required to make us successful. That's the bottom line. And manufacturing is one of the, if you're in that industry, particularly we deal a lot with food and beverage. Yep. We're seeing it right now today, that the companies that are getting competitive and going out for that shrinking pool of high tech, let's call it high tech skilled trade talent, those companies are able to draw them in, but they're going to continue to be challenged because of the transition that's going on in that industry.
I mean, we don't do this podcast to more to talk about the space and to talk about the challenge of skilled trade, but the reality is our business is built around that idea. You have to think outside the box. You have to get the talent to where you need it. You can't. If you're in this business and you're living in this world right now, I'm preaching to the choir on going. You're not going to find all the talent you need locally where you're at. It's that pond has been outfished, and so you have to expand that, which is what we do. So whether it's using those tools, training people, but you got to bring the talent in. Because to your point, Tim, and we'll go back to the similar football analogy, is I talk to companies all the time, and this idea that, hey, it's great for the individual that's working in your plant, and to go, we're going to take this individual off the production line, and we're going to teach them to do this. That's great. That's a great opportunity, and occasionally it will work, but it's a long process. And the reality is, you're taking a maybe a 1-star and trying to turn them into a 5-star, as opposed to bringing that in and then teaching them your process. Your chance of success long term, I think, goes way up if you just bring the talent.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of strategies. We've talked about a variety of strategies. Definitely that's one that we encourage. So, at the beginning of the podcast, we talked about what industries out there are going to be facing the biggest challenge going forward. And our sweet spot that we deal a lot is the manufacturing space. We understand that. We see it going on right now. Obviously, there's an aging workforce there. It's pretty demanding environment. That's not going to change. There's a lot of already headwinds that you have, especially in the food industry. If you're in a facility that's bringing in, livestock and you're producing a product out the other end, it's already facing an uphill battle. So you're going to have more headwinds looking for higher talent coming into that facility. So we're not telling you anything you don't know, but we're just saying don't assume it's going to get better if you do nothing. And that's really, we talk about risk management here. And ask yourself the question, if we do nothing today, if we don't change anything, what is the possibility of this thing causing us to lose business, to lose opportunity? Ask yourself that simple question. If we do nothing, is it going to get better? And if the answer is no, it's going to cause a significant impact and the probability of it is pretty high, then start doing something today to get ahead of that. So there's some other industries that I think, as we did this study and looked in it, that I thought were kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. Even though we don't necessarily currently put a lot of our folks in there, it may be important to you because you may find yourself, you're in this industry. We talk about manufacturing a lot, but this is one that I thought was a little bit interesting, is that the textile mills, something that I thought, we don't even do that here anymore, but because of COVID and because of the impact to the offshore supply chain, where we got all of our clothes and textiles and things like that, that dried up, that shut down. And so a lot of textile mills and manufacturing are seeing a huge ramp up here, and people want to buy domestic to decrease the risk of supply chain. So actually, if you're in the textile industry and a textile mill, there's going to be a growth opportunity for you, but to get the workers that you need to come in is going to be a challenge for you, because a lot of the people that worked in your industry are gone. They've retired, they moved on because the jobs have dwindled. Well, now they're coming back. So there's not that lack of knowledge and skills there, not to mention the tools and techniques that you used 15, 20, 30 years ago have changed. Your competition overseas, they have increased automation. You're going to have to do the same, not only capital expenditures to bring that equipment in, but these same technicians, you're going to need those to remain competitive. So particularly if supply chain opens up and those competitors from overseas are there. So you're going to need these skilled tradesmen if you're in the textile industry. So I thought that was one that I didn't see coming.
Yeah, well, I think you can apply that to, the idea of what's happening in the textile industry with the demand for onshore and bringing that back. I think that, we talk about it, and I think it's real. There's going to be a resurgence of even more manufacturing coming back, what we say onshore, back into the States, for the pure and simple reason that we've lived through these last 18, 24 months, whatever it is at this point, of this supply chain and being too dependent on things that we can't get. I mean, the auto industry and being able to get semiconductor parts and different things, whatever. I mean, my wife she's a designer and real estate agent, and right now, I mean, they can't get appliances for houses. You can't get lumber. You can't all these
paint. I mean, I just
paint,
had my house done, and I mean, like the guy that did it had to search multiple locations to get enough stain and paint he needed to do our house, because the supply chain's dried up. Because all that stuff comes from
parts industry. Of it, pieces of it do. So I think you can apply that to the textile to other industries as well. And again, it gets back to that. You're going to have to be able to compete, whether you're competing with other manufacturers. But if you have a resurgence in manufacturing, I mean, we see it now. We have a highly automated bottling company plant that we work with, and they're probably top competitor to losing their automation techs is the auto industry. So it's not just, I got to beat out the other people in my space. I got to beat out these other industries for the talent. So if you have a resurgence in textiles, you have a resurgence in some of these other industries, everybody's battling for there's only so many, and you got to get them.
Yeah, so. And I mean, lumber industry is another one that's very similar, but one we also do a little work with. It's the trucking industry, transportation industry. And there's a lot of parts and pieces to that. But it's interesting to me that we're seeing some clients that their demand is for the people that do the maintenance, the guys that repair, keep the trucks, the trailers up and running, a huge demand for that. And primarily it goes back to supply chain, that the ability to get new equipment, new trucks, new trailers, is very difficult. So they have to, again, post-COVID, they have put more emphasis on maintaining, repairing, keeping what they have up and going, which is going to cause them to bring in more people that know how to do that. Whereas before they would just, depreciate a piece of equipment and go buy a new one. Mm-hmm. Now they got to keep it running. So you got to have skilled guys that can come in and that can keep that stuff running, and they've got to compete. Those people have mechanical skills that can translate to other industries. And so you have to, maybe traditionally you pay $18, $20 an hour for those guys to keep your equipment up and going. The demand wasn't as high. Now you have higher demand, and those guys can go find work in other places. We're seeing it. So you're going to have to be competitive to get those guys that are maybe more mechanical side of the skilled trades.
Yep.
That's an industry we see needing more workers in the future.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so, then, one other one, and Tim's got a little story he'll share here in a second in this, but just the overall, just the finishing, specialized contracting, repair. Right now, I mentioned a minute ago, that, the space that my wife is in, but just finding people to come in and do finish work and whether it's carpentry or plumbing or whatever. I mean, the demand is so high, and the shortage of, there's not any of those. You talk to somebody that owns a painting company, or talk to somebody that runs a plumbing company, you talk to somebody that runs a local, every one of them will tell you the same thing. I can't find any help, and so
more work
it's
than
really
I can do. I'm backed up.
Yep. So yeah, you ran into a guy.
Yeah. So this is all of us have a vehicle. Sometimes it needs work. So I've got an older truck, and you may have experienced this. The headliner, right? The headliner in your truck, the upholstery started kind of falling down, and I just noticed it. So I really thought very little about it. I said, well, I'll call an auto upholstery shop, and I'll take it in probably this afternoon. Not thinking at all. So I called. First company I called, they said, we really aren't doing that much anymore because I haven't been able to find the help. And he said, my business is really kind of in trouble. He said, there's only one place I know of in town. We live in a fairly good sized town. There's 1 million people in our area, so it's not like a small town. He said, there's only one shop that I know that's currently even taking people to come in and taking work. So I called the shop, and the guy said, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've done plenty of those. It's not a big deal. Here's the cost. And I'm like, great. And I'm thinking, well, can I bring it in today or tomorrow? And he said, my earliest opportunity for you is April of 2022, next April. And I'm like, I thought he meant August, I'm like, next spring? And he goes, I can put you on a waiting list, but realistically, it's next spring before I can get to you. So we talked a little bit further, and I ended up going to his shop and just talking to him as a business owner. And he's, again, one of these specialized contracting. He does auto upholstery, and he said, listen, I can't find the people that come into this very unique skilled trade. I can't find the people to come in. My demand is going through the roof. I don't have the time to train them. Nobody wants to come into this. And because the stuff we work on is very high end, cars that are getting refurbished, he said, I can't afford to spend my time training somebody. And every time I do, they go start another business. So we're thinking about bringing him on one of these podcasts and talking to him, just his perspective that there's this cycle that he's ran a business for 30 years. He said he himself, the business owner, is working 70 hours a week and can't keep up. Next spring is when his first available is. But because this ability to find guys, and you think auto upholstery, how high skilled is that? Yeah. Well, apparently pretty skilled. But that was just a microcosm of this.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's not that that we're going to solve the auto upholstery industry shortage. But I think, to Tim's point, it was a story that resonated because we hear that story everywhere, and we hear that story not just in this small shop guy that's put his life into this business and now trying to keep it going, all the way to Fortune 500 companies that are trying to keep their plants running and trying to figure out how they're going to find the talent or the workers to be able to do it. So I think the story, it just resonates with the situation that I think we're all facing, and that we're going to, not to be Debbie Downer or anything like this. It's just the opposite. It's a little bit of I think a lot of people have awakened. A lot of companies have awakened to the issue, and they're starting to do more and more. We know that based on what our business is doing and the people that are coming to us and seeking our our help in finding the talent. So we know they are, but I guess I would encourage, we have companies too that'll come to us and they really think, well, I need some guys, you get them, we'll hire them, you go away, kind of a thing. And it sounds great on the surface, but the reality is this is not going away. I mean, if I find you two, next week you'll lose two, and then you need two more. And it's just, you got to start to think broader and longer term, to solve it. The other thing is, we talked about, what can you do to minimize, and so, the obvious is you're going to have to get real with your wages. You're going to have to, you can't just pay anything, but you're going to have to understand what is the market, what's the talent. We talk to a lot of our companies about that. We provide that kind of information just because we're in so many states and in so many things. We can tell somebody, and they want to know. Most companies want to know. Well, what do you think? I'm thinking, about 30, and I'm going, well, you're not totally out there, but you're on the bottom end of what it's going to take to get that talent. And most of them are like, hey, we can't afford to lose the talent, so tell us what you think. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the wages is one we've talked about, and actually skilled craftsmen on the other side of this. If you're out there, we take a look at our previous podcast, what you can do to take advantage of this. So a lot of things that you can do as a company. Brett, you talked about up-training folks. Yep. We think that's a great thing. I would say, too, that we've mentioned the baby boomers that are coming of retirement age. Those guys, if you think about the people at your facility that are your most valuable employees, and from the skilled trades perspective, they know how everything runs. They can fix everything. They've got all this wisdom and inherent knowledge. Well, you need to be planning now to mitigate the risk of them walking out the door by making sure that they are passing on that knowledge. They're mentoring the newer employees. Our tendency is to just continue to have them do what they do because it's so important and valuable. But you need to be able to recognize that if they're going to be with me for the next year, 2 years, maybe 5, let's make sure that that wisdom and that knowledge is being transferred to some of your newer workers there. That's a big mistake, I think, a lot of companies. It's like so-and-so put in his retirement papers, he's gone in 2 weeks, and everything that indivital knew is out the door.
Just walked out the door. Yeah, no, I think it's something you have to get on top of. You got a lot of, we even hear it too, let's assume that an individual that's been there for 40 years and he's going to retire at 65. If that individual knows that, hey, would you stay and work another few years, but in the capacity of basically taking your skills. One, it's very honoring to them. It's very respectful, which is something we drive our business off of is respect and value back to the trades. But it recognizes that, and you have a decent chance they might work another 2 or 3, 4 years because they're not having to be maybe, on their feet as much or whatever the case may be. So I think that is big. We always encourage companies to, if you're not investing in apprenticeship, in long-term training, in education partnerships with trade schools, obviously we'd highly encourage you to do that. What we do by bringing you the talent today, we often say the challenge of the education, and this is not at all, matter of fact, I'll reiterate, we would strongly encourage you to do that, and a lot of companies are. But the facts are facts. That's a tomorrow solution for a today problem. So you have to invest in that. It's probably going to be a multi-year process to start to get that talent. And in the meantime, you've got to use every tool available to you to get the talent that you need today.
We based our business model fundamentally another complete sector that's outside the realm, and it's a medical field. Early on we talked about this skill work. Our model was based on the travel nursing or travel medical business model, where they solved this problem that they were facing 20 years ago in large part by developing this model that we have taken the best of and applied to this space. And it's just an innovative way to look at hiring and staffing. It's a tool that you can pull out of your tool pouch. It's something we provide, and we would say take a close look at that as part of your mitigation strategies. Start planning now. We're big believers in planning today so you're not fighting fires of tomorrow. explore some of these innovative solutions, reach out to us at Skillwork. You know, you can get the link right here on this podcast, but it's skillwork.com. No cost. Obviously, there's no obligation, but we're always happy to talk to any of you out there, even if it's just to share ideas, and you know, we're in this together. So feel free to reach out to us at any time, and hopefully this was helpful to you and spurred some ideas and thoughts. And you know, for Brett and I'm Tim at Skillwork, we really appreciate you joining with us here on this podcast, taking the time out of it's valuable. We understand for you to invest time in doing this, so we appreciate that very much. Until next time, talk to you later.